Have you ever wondered how to lose $500,000 on one door? Not multifamily, not industrial storage. I'm talking one door. Hey, I'm Christy Candle, and I'm joined today with my co host.
Erik Stenbakken. We're both real estate investors, primarily in long-term and short-term rentals. Christy?
And I am a real estate investor in long term, short term, mid-term, and also do real estate development. And we're here on the Real Estate Pessimist podcast, where we talk about the good, the bad, and the truth about real estate investing. And Erik, why do we talk about that?
We're here to educate our listeners, warn our listeners, and most of all, inspire you. If you've ever wondered where the name The Real Estate Pessimist came from, you're just about to hear the story right here. We're going to unfold for you a heck of a story, and it's mostly unfolded, but there's a lot to it.
And this is something, guys, we want to help you understand all of the facets of real estate investing. So you go in eyes wide open. It's not all sunshines and rainbows and unicorns. So today we're going to talk about Erik Steele that, went sideways at some points. We'll point out the red flags along the way for ways that you can avoid these pitfalls. But in the end, we're going to give you those lessons learned so that way you can apply it, put those tools in your toolbox and do something with it. So Erik, why don't we go ahead and dive in and maybe give us a little bit of background on the market and the project?
Okay, so I'll give you a spoiler alert. I'm still alive, okay? Because there's going to be a few points, but boy, did it come close a few times. This was our 11th door. We started out in long-term rentals and we pivoted into short-term rentals. And this was an out-of-state investment. This is in Tennessee, in the Pigeon Forge, Gatlinburg area. And for those of you who are west of the Mississippi, you may wonder, like, what in the world? What's in Tennessee? Well, about 13 million people who go through that marketplace every year, maybe more. The numbers are staggering, actually. And if you talk to anybody east of the Mississippi, almost everybody will say at one point or another, their family has vacationed in Pigeon Forge and Gatlinburg. So I look at that and say, those are all potential customers. So we had purchased 2 already in the Pigeon Forge Gatlinburg market, and they were performing very well.
Did you build those or did you purchase 2 and ran them as short-term rentals?
Well, the first 2 that we got were purchased. They were already set up. We did some modest rehab. I mean, modest, mostly designing and some furniture, and they were up and running. We said, this is a good thing. But the hot ticket was a property with a pool. Like, that was the unicorn. This is about 2021. And if you had a place with a pool, it would just print money. The problem with this is, of course, everybody else wants that. And so by the time they would hit the MLS, they were gone. And I mean, like, gone in 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 3 minutes, just like you had to be on it like a day trader to get something like this. And I said, well, this isn't going to work. And so I reached out to a real estate agent and I said, hey, we need to find the builder before they list this thing. So you have to find them in the construction stage. And once we do that, then we'll go buy it. And so that's what she did. She went out, she met a builder, and they were in the pre-construction phase. It was just an empty lot, but they had a plan. They had a good track record. And she brought it to us before it ever hit the market. We said, we're in, we'll do it. So we built one, and it went super well. This was our second purpose-built STR. We built another one in Colorado a few years earlier, and that build had also gone super well. I had very little supervision of the builders. The build turned out about 99% and I'm going to say 100%, because there were some things that turned out better than we expected, and a few things that were a little bit weird. Like, we'd said, hey, would you do this? And you get in and it's like, why did that not happen? But overall, 100%. We thought this is going to be amazing. So at this point, we had 3 in the Tennessee market. And we were watching the MLS. We'd waited about a year. And I should say that the new one that we built, wow, it was everything that we had hoped for and more. It was incredible. The thing was booked all the time, and the numbers it was turning out were just beyond my imagination. Okay.
So you're sold on the market. You've already done new construction.
Yes.
Now you're like,
Yep.
hey, everything I'm touching is starting to gold. I've got the Midas touch. Like, we are rocking and rolling. Let's do this again.
Absolutely. That's what every real estate investor does, right? They they get that check and they look at the check and then they think, well, my expenses are only about 80% of this, including debt service. So let's do it again. That's exactly what we did. And we saw an empty lot come up for sale on the MLS. And here's why we went for it. It was big enough to put a larger property on. And it was originally sold as an empty lot with a 2-bedroom cabin. We're like, 2-bedroom cabins? No. Let's like build this so that heads and beds, right? And so we decided we could go bigger. The builder said, yeah, we could do it. So we bought it. We bought the lot. We owned the lot. And then it was time to connect with the builder. We had picked this. I want to back up just a little bit to say this had the qualities we really, really wanted. It had city water. And down there in Tennessee, lots and lots and lots of wells. And if you ever had a well as a property or commercial property, it's a little bit dicey at times, right? Also, most of the properties out there that are not in city limits are on septic. So you got all kinds of issues, just septic, right? I say that to a real estate investor crowd and they should know, and you're already biting their nails, right? So this is on city water, city sewer, city utilities, high-speed internet. It has all the things. It's in city limits. We're like, oh my goodness, this is incredible. Let's do it. And so we get started and we're ready to go. Looked like everything was sunshine.
So when you get started, so this time it didn't come with a builder already doing it. So now you're stepping out of your zone a little bit further because now you've bought the property, but now you go through the process of vetting a contractor. And was
Well,
this further
because
from the
see,
location?
when it was sold, it had, oh, hey, the real estate agent who's selling it already has a builder and they already have plans. And we thought, easy as this, we're just going to walk right into the money. And so we started talking with the builder and we said, awesome. Hey, can you send us a link to some of the properties you've already done in this market? Well, we don't have any that are finished yet.
Oh,
I thought, all right, well, do you have any under construction? Oh yeah, we got a bunch under construction. And I thought, okay, that sounds like it's okay. So we went to our lender who we had worked with on the new build the last time. And we said, hey, we've got these new builders. Here's the plans. This is the square footage we're planning on being done, about 3,000 square feet, 5-bedroom with a swimming pool indoors, right? And so we're like, this is going to be amazing. And our banker came back and said, I'm not so sure about these guys. And I said, well, why? What have they done wrong? And that was the wrong question. I mean, that's a good question, but that's the wrong question. The question we should have asked is, what have they done right? And they had done some builds, but the builds that they had done were in, I think, Carolina. I was like, okay.
It's a bit of a red flag there. Not knowing any more of the story, that seems a bit of a red flag that a local lender doesn't know of them, that they potentially haven't finished a build in this market because each one is slightly different. And, whoa, interesting. Okay, tell us more.
We thought we're pretty smart. Everything we've touched has turned to gold so far. What does this lender know? Well, as it turns out, this lender knows a few things because he had written over 1,000 building loans in that market. That was an exit we passed. So we're like, we're going to go ahead. And the bid for the build was so good. It was so good. It was almost in the too good to be true range. So we thought we're going to make even more money was what we thought. And so we went ahead. You already know the title of this podcast, right? So you kind of know which direction this is going. We're walking you through what went through our minds so that if you're doing a build, you're working on a project, and that's going through your mind, you might take your foot off the gas.
And start to see those red flags that go, hey, maybe ask some more questions here. It could have been that this turned out totally different, but things like making sure that a contractor is familiar in a market, making sure that people know of each other and that there's local referrals and that you've seen their finished builds. So many times I'll see a contractor be really great in one market, but just not understand the terrain in another, not understand the process for different loan draws or lien waivers or the soils or how the in that
or
market.
the subs. It's a huge thing. It's a huge thing. You don't know who the good subs are and who the bad
Yeah.
subs are if you're brand new to a market. You're going to get whoever doesn't have work at the moment, which is
They-
maybe not the subs you want to have, right? So we thought, well, we're going to go ahead.
And how
It
long did
took
that
us,
process from what's that time frame? Are we talking weeks? Are we
it
talking for that
took,
period?
it took almost 6 months for them to go from we bought the lot to we have plans ready to go.
And that
That
was for
should
the
have been,
builder to have the plans designed or to have permits ready?
well, yeah, that's a really good
Oh,
question
there's more
because
to unpack here. All
there's
right,
oh
let's dig in.
there is so much more. So we said, hey, what's the budget look like? And the thing is, this was sold as furnished, which is not super unusual in the Tennessee market. Is that sellers will often of existing properties will sell them furnished, right? And that creates a little bit of weirdness with the appraisal because appraisals are not supposed to include furniture, but you're buying it with the furniture. But both the lenders and the appraisers and the buyers and the sellers all kind of know how this works. And it just works. So in the new build, they had included furnishings, which is a little bit different because this is all brand new now, right? And so I asked them, I said, hey, I'm looking at the budget here for the build, which by the way was pretty vague. It was a very vague budget, I should say. And I didn't see any of I don't remember how much it was supposed to be, 30,000, 40,000 for furnishing.
Mhm.
Um, and I remember the builder said, don't worry about that. We just sprinkle that extra money in all across the budget like fairy dust. And I thought,
Oh,
oh,
scary red flag.
and I just thought, how creative is that? But also, hmm, not so sure if that's a good idea. Short answer, no, it's not a good idea because what that means is they do not have an accurate budget. Right? It means they're going to fudge the budget all over the place, which is exactly what happened. And I'm looking at notes here because there are so many things that went wrong. One of the things that we were looking at was how to upgrade it from a 2-bedroom to a 5-bedroom. And if you've ever done any development, parking is one of the things you have to deal with. And I kept hearing from the builder, well, we're waiting from the city to get back to us on the parking situation. Now, this is in an HOA in the city. And this is important to note is that the HOA is exclusively 100% vacation homes. Okay, there's a lot of hate out on social media right now, like you're stealing homes from people and you're making them into short-term rentals. Maybe in some markets that could be true. You could make an argument for that, right? But there are markets, and we were buying in this market where it's 100% rental properties. They're all invested. Nobody lives there, right? So the HOA is built specifically for short-term rentals.
Which was
That's
part of your
just
research and homework that you did, and you knew in making a calculated risk and decision to do this.
exactly.
So you're like, wait, I'm checking the boxes. This is the right area. It's an HOA that approves short term rentals. This should be relatively straightforward.
Yeah, and more than just approves them, that's the sole purpose of the HOA. And so it's like, okay, that's not going to be a problem. So I kept saying, hey, we got to get the plans approved. We got to have parking because there's a parking to bedrooms ratio, and there is everywhere that you build, right? So we kept asking, like, what? We need approval, we need approval, we need approval. And they kept saying, well, the city's not getting back to us. The city's not getting back to us. So I called the city and I said, hey, when are you going to get back to them? I said, this is not up to us. It's up to your HOA. I thought, what? Why are they not calling the HOA? So I called the HOA, and I'm not lying. Within 48 hours, I had approval for all our parking. And I thought, well, okay, these guys seem a little bit slow. So let's just go ahead. Let's get the plans approved. Okay, plans are approved. Submit them to the city. So at this point, I'm thinking, you know what? I'm going to have the city loop me in on all the emails that go out to the builder, just so that I know. Well, the
Very
next
smart.
email that was a smart move because the email I got from the city was thanks for the plans, but these are not site approved. In other words, they took a plan for a completely different location and submitted them to the city as if we were going to build it on this location. Well, there's this little detail called engineering that is relevant when you're dealing in building in the Tennessee mountains, right? There's slopes all over the place, and this was built on a pretty good sized slope. And so they kept submitting the wrong plans. And then when they submitted finally plans that had been sketched up for that location, they were not engineered. And I was like, you guys have to submit the appropriate plans. Obvious red flag here. If I'm babysitting the contractor already at this stage and we haven't even scraped dirt, they are incompetent. They are not the builder. I should have fired them right then, but I didn't. Because see, a lot of things going through me. I was like, we're going to make so much money. We got to stick with them because their price is so good. I mean, after all, the real estate agent must have vetted them. No, no, that's probably not what happened.
And the biggest thing is people that aren't putting the money into a deal aren't the ones who care the most amount about the outcome of the project. The real estate agent wants to sell the property, the contractor wants the contract to build the project. And as the developer, you're the sole person responsible for the bigger picture. And even though people are licensed and it's their responsibilities, there is a certain level of accountability that you have to hold them to, which unfortunately, seeing this, I would like to tell you that you are definitely not the only one in this boat. You are not the only person that this happened to where you thought you relied on professionals and experts to take you through this process, which already happened twice. But now you've got the excitement. You're like, you know what? I know it works. I know there's lots of money. Maybe
Right.
we've got a little bit
Right.
of our margin that's shrinking, but it's still fine. Like we'll still be able to do this.
Exactly. And I want to emphasize that point is that actually you, you as the person with the money are in the driver's seat and it's all on you. It is all on you. Christy mentioned, well, they're licensed. Well, guess what I found out later? The licensing isn't worth a used piece of toilet paper in Tennessee. That is my opinion. Because when this was all said and done, the the licensing board for contractors sent him a letter. That is all. That is all that ever happened. And basically, what it means to me is that being licensed means nothing. Okay, so here's how he was licensed. He was he was from Carolina somewhere, but had his business based in Georgia and was using a cousin's building license in Tennessee. Those are all red flags, folks. If you're listening right there, all of those things are red flags. And those alone are worth saying, no thanks, pass, move on. Because even if you are properly licensed in a city or a state, you would think that there's this like, well, they're licensed, they have this credibility, they have this, this thing behind them. Not so. So, anyways, we're moving on. And we finally got this thing up with that. We got engineered plans. We got the right plans submitted. We got it approved. It took them, I don't remember, the timeline gets fuzzy because it was over a 2.5 year span. Okay. So this gets a little fuzzy. They finally got it dug out and they put in the foundation, huge blocks. They're not just like your regular cinder blocks. They're big, heavy blocks that they put in as the foundation. And we went and visited. It's almost a year after we had purchased it. They had the foundation put in. The footers were poured and they had the block wall foundation. And I remember looking at it thinking, man, something's funny about this because the bottom level that should be a full story is only about 6 feet tall. Like, what is that? And there was this extra piece, an extra wall that went, when there's this foundation, it was a rectangle. Should be super simple, right? Just a rectangle. Well, imagine a rectangle and then you draw a line off the left side and then down all the way to the front. So it kind of made this open box about 12 feet wide and the full depth of the house, which was, I don't know, I'm guessing here 30 feet deep. And I was like, what is this wall here? It's 8 feet tall and it doesn't connect to anything. It doesn't correspond to anything on the plans. Like, where did this come from? Why is this here? And I know who paid for it. It's me. I was like, well, so I asked him, I said, to our building contact, which by the way, our our customer rep with this company, who by this time had about 30 properties, 30 under construction at the same time in this market. Our customer rep kept changing about every 6 to 8 weeks. They kept firing somebody and then there'd be somebody new and they kept firing somebody new. So anyways, I kept asking and asking and asking and no answers and no answers and no answers. I was like, this is getting frustrating. Now at this point, we had paid probably, this is a little fuzzy here, about $150,000, maybe more, to the contractor. And all they had done was dug out, put in footers, and put up some block.
And for comparison, what was the total estimated budget to do the house straight up, no change orders, no anything?
I think it was about $750,000.
Okay, so you've paid a seventh ish, somewhere a sixth, or of the cost, and you kind of have a foundation.
Yeah, we got a foundation, but they hadn't finished the backfill. And they said, okay, so now it's time for another $75,000 draw. I said, well, wait a minute. you got to answer some of these questions for me. What's up with this extra wall? And what's going on with this? Well, they kept not doing anything, not doing anything, not doing anything. Hold your seatbelts here. I get a picture, and they framed up the house. The whole thing. Climb a complete flight of stairs just to get to the ground floor? Well, yeah, that's what it took. It's like, okay. I was like, wait. And then there's
So
like,
now you're
okay,
going, wait, you just had a major construction change. I wasn't told about this. And I guess where are the city inspectors at this point too?
well, interesting you should mention that. Let's come back to that in just a little bit. Because what happened is they said, okay, we're still really concerned about this extra foundation piece that's not attached to anything. What is it and why is it there? And is it safe to stand up by itself? Because I keep saying, you've got to backfill this. Oh, by the way, yeah. So at the front of the house faces the road, and then it goes up a hill away from you, right? Behind the house, they had not filled the foundation. So you've got about a 6-8 foot block wall with no dirt around it and a 3-story house on top of the block wall. And it's not backfilled. And I kept saying, this doesn't sound right. Like, how are you going to get the backfill in there? Because you've got a 3-story house in front of it now. And this is a narrow road in front of it. There's no access from the backside because that's uphill. There's other houses up the hill. You got to backfill this thing. And they kept hemming and hawing about it. And then they submitted another request for draw. And I said,
Mm-hmm.
no. We got to get this figured out first. And they kept saying, blah, 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 making excuses. So I said, okay, I'm going to hire an engineer to go out and look at this wall and say, is this wall safe? Is the rest of our foundation safe? Because it's not been backfilled. What the heck's going on? So our engineer sends me an email and says, well, I got good news and bad news. The good news is this extra wall that you've got, she says, I have no idea why it's there. There's no structural reason it needs to be here at all. But the good news is it can stand by itself. If you backfill on the outside of it, it's going to be just fine. And so we thought, what we'll do is we'll put the deck above that and we'll have this amazing hot tub grotto down below it.
Oh,
Private.
creative.
Right. We're going to make lemonade out of this. And so we thought that's what we'll do. She says, but I have bad news. I said, well, what's the bad news? She says, do you notice along the front side of the house here, because it wasn't backfilled and there's no retaining wall on the front, your footers, the dirt around your footers is eroding. Your footers are showing. And every time it rains, you have more and more exposure on your footer. At this time, I'm like, this is nuts. This isn't cool. And I don't remember if I called the city inspector. Yeah, I did, because he didn't call me. I called him. I said, hey, is this safe? Like, what's going on? You got to go out and see this house. It's been framed up. And he says, what? I said, the house has been framed up. He's like, well, last time I was out there, it wasn't nothing. And they don't have a permit to frame.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So we're talking a 3-story house, been framed up, no permit to frame. So the city inspector goes out and looks at it and goes, oh, this is unsafe. So he put a stop work order on it. Yeah.
Which is
Nobody's
great that
allowed.
you're finally getting your contractor's attention, but really bad because at the same time, you have all these carrying costs. And now you have to solve this problem with this contractor who isn't communicating.
Yeah. So speaking of, he's not communicating, and I have his attention kind of, but they keep making promises. We'll do the backfill. You just pay us the next draw and we'll do the backfill. And I said, no. You do the mitigation first. Then I pay you the next draw. And they kept saying, oh, we'll do it. Don't worry. And then I get a phone call from the building superintendent who said, yeah, the head builder just fired me. So now at this point, our customer rep had left. The original builder, it was his dad, was injured, and he's out of the picture. Our customer rep's been fired, and the controller of the company is now taking all these roles, and our builder, our site manager, got fired. So the only 2 people that I know is the guy who's taking over the building, who have never met and visited with 0 times, and the controller of the company, the financial controller. And so I'm in correspondence with the financial controller going, hey, this is getting out of control. We can't do this. He says, they said we're going to get a solution. We said we're going to get a solution. And then everybody just radio silence, ghosted me. The builder, the control, everybody just gone. And so I've got a stop work order. I've got erosion going on. I've got a house that's framed up without a permit. And we've put money into this thing. Now, we're not into the building loan yet. We had a building loan, but we hadn't done any draws on it. Wait a minute. Maybe we did. I think we did put some draws on it. Yeah, we did. So at this point, we've got some draws in on this thing. Oh, and at this time, I also get a lien from the company that made the trusses because the builder hadn't paid the truss company, except we had paid the builder for the trusses. I was like, hey, we paid for this. Oh, don't worry about it. Don't worry. That was their answer to everything. Don't worry about it. I was like, yeah, I'm worried about it.
Mm-hmm.
So all of this just keeps going on. And at this point, it's got a roof on it, but not a full roof. They just put the decking on. So actually, there's a gap in the middle, and it's raining into the house. The roof decking is getting soaked. There's standing water in the house. I get a picture from my real estate agent, and it's starting to mildew, top to bottom. And I'm like, this is bad. So
at this point, you know that it's probably time to make a major change, right?
Yeah. At this point, we're like, this is it. So we contact a lawyer down in that market, and they drafted a letter, said, hey, you're fired. We offered a settlement letter. I'm not going to say anything about the legal stuff going on because I want to protect our rights to pursue things. Mm-hmm. So that's just how it started. I'll just kind of leave the rest of that kind of part blank. But the short story, I'll mention this, is that we didn't file any suit with him right then because this builder at that point already had 1 federal lawsuit against them and 6 state lawsuits against them.
Did that happen while you were mid-construction through that year's process?
But we didn't know
it's not something you would have known ahead of time. It just happened as you went through. So they just got in way over their heads. They lost some key people on their team and they just folded.
Yeah. So we thought, we'll go get another builder. Well, guess what? People do not want to come in and take over somebody's train wreck of a build. We got all kinds of quotes. They were anywhere from, 500, 600, 700,000 over the original build cost,
which was 750-ish.
Right. Okay. So now we're getting quotes up to 1.2, 1.3 million. We're like, this thing isn't going to be worth that when it's done, even if it's done in a fabulous way. There's just no way. We did make contact with one builder who had built in that local area. He'd been there a long time and he had a good reputation. And we said, okay, awesome. We had seen some of the photos of his previous properties that he'd built. We thought, good, we're good. He was still, I want to say 200,000 higher than our original builder. So now we're looking at $1 million to build.
So now you're trying to stomach, hold on, we thought we were building for this. Now we are spent all of this time and this money, and now we're going to spend another $1 million?
Yeah, and that got even more complicated because we said, hey, we got a building loan. Okay, so we find the builder. It sounds like he's doing good. And we're like, we're going to launch into this. And we said to our bank, all right, so you go ahead and we'll start drawing on our building loan. Because up to this point, we bought the lot cash. We had put in the first over 100,000, I don't remember how much more, in cash over time. Because we had this time, we have a whole portfolio behind us. So the portfolio is generating the money. Which one thing I just want to point out real quick is that many people think that real estate investors are just these super wealthy people who take all of their super fat allowance and then just go buy property with it. That's not how it works.
We're not?
I'm not. You're not?
No, okay. Definitely not.
All right. So here's how it works for most real estate investors is their real estate makes the money that then they reinvest in other real estate. That's how that works. It's not just us getting, I'm not a trustafarian, just getting money from some fund. It's real estate.
We make the same money work for itself. One property, execute that strategy, move on to the next, execute that strategy. So yes, and typically a real estate investor is going to be cash poor and asset rich. That's the main thing. Yep. I know I have a friend who's a financial advisor, and on the East Coast, they are very liquid in their cash. But on the West Coast, people are very cash poor and asset rich. And that's just the way real estate investment works.
Yeah. So that's our situation. We're thinking, okay, we'll try to get our bank to we'll say, okay, we're out of cash. And so now our building loan can kick in. Not so fast. Here's what happens is that because we had this cost overrun at this point of 250, our bank says, no. we're not going to come in the middle and then expect you to take it across the finish line, because if they put in, the 600,000, and then it turns out you don't have the last $250,000, what they have is an unfinished project that the LTV is about 100%, the loan to value. And they don't want that. They want to have their asset, their loan, protected. And they want to have lots of equity buffer in that property. Well, at this point, we didn't have equity buffer in the property at all. And so they said, no, 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 you come up with the cash first. You pay the overage first, and then we'll take the building loan and we'll finish it off so that we're guaranteed to have a finished building. And we've only got very limited equity. So their LTV is quite good, right?
Which, as the lender, that makes perfect sense. They're protecting their downside, they're mitigating their risk. But as you, the real estate investor, now you magically need to come up with 250,000?
Actually turned out to be more. So what do? I didn't have a piggy bank I could just break and pop out $250,000 in nickels. So what we had to do is we had to mortgage 3 other properties in order to get this.
So that sounds time consuming. How long does that take?
Well, we had to do it fast. We had about 45 days. Because until we get this money, until we can pay the new builder, it's raining on the property, it's mildewing, we're getting more erosion out front. All of this is happening as the clock is ticking. So we go out and we just get whatever loans we can. Our DTI, which by the way is debt to income ratio, which lenders look at as they're going to make you a loan, our DTI is terrible. It is so terrible. And typically when you go to refinance a property, you can get about 80% cash out of the value of the property. They call it an 80% LTV, loan to value. Well, we went to get a cash out on a property that had been paid off, and they would give us 25% loan to value maximum because our DTI was so bad. Oh no, this is bad news. When a bank looks at your financial situation and says, we're only going to loan you 25%, of the value of that property, they are financial experts and they see trouble. And I was like, well, this is not a good sign. We got to get out of this. We took the money that we have. We put it down first. The builder got busy. To his credit, the new builder was awesome with a skid steer. He backfilled that thing first thing. Boom. He built a really strong retaining wall, tied it into the foundation with big long steel bolts, epoxied them in, just went nuts, right? We had an engineer draw this up, and he did everything to the nines. Like, it was solid. And once that was done, the building inspector lifted the stop work order. We sprayed the whole house down with anti-mold stuff. And it was amazing. Just a couple days later, when it was dry, it was like, it just, instead of kind of a gray wood, now it looks like bright wood again. So we did all of that stuff. We were very careful about that. Our new builder noticed that the last builder had put the stairs in the wrong place, in the middle of the house. So we had to move an entire flight of stairs over. Is like, oh my goodness, could it get any dumber?
Death by a million cuts. So you've got this new builder. He's cranking away. You finally are getting all the right permits, the releases. You're going. Is he at least able to smoothly take this one across the finish line?
He took it across the finish line. To call it smoothly would not be accurate. It took him another 6 months longer than he estimated to actually get it all done. Now, here's a little interesting thing I want to share with our listeners, is that we had hired the new builder on a cost plus. He did his estimate. He had a detailed breakdown of costs. It made sense. He was asking for funds as things got done and as we were sending someone out to verify that things were done. In the middle of the process, his first accountant left, quit, fired. We don't know the story. There's a story there. And we got a new accountant. And the invoices started looking different. And I was like, okay, something's kind of wacky here, because his estimate for this total was $20,000 and his new accountant is sending me an invoice for $20,000. And in the past, he'd say, well, I estimated $15,000, your actual was $13,500, or I estimated $7,000 for this, and your total was actually $7,422. Like, okay, this all makes sense, right? And we were flying pretty close to average, actually a little bit under budget. And now everything came in exactly as he had estimated it. And I thought, that is not how stuff works. I've been in business for a long time. By the way, at this point, we had been investors for 12 years. And I've been in business for myself for about 25. That's not how that works. Like, that's not actually a cost plus. those are not numbers because costs never come in big, nice round numbers like that. So I started asking questions, pushing and pushing and pushing. And I kept digging through the accounting. Well, the short story is I found about $37,000 that they had overbilled us for things we had already paid for with the second builder. And they just, oops, put it on the account again later. And the new accountant, here's what the new accountant was doing. The new accountant was doing this. Like if he estimated 20,000, you pay 20,000, even if the actual cost was only 18.5. But if they'd estimated 20,000 and the cost was actually 23,000, we got a bill for 23,000. So they were taking it on both sides. Like if they did it under budget, they'd take the extra money. If it was over budget, they would bill us. And I said, no, you can't have it both ways. And one of the things I didn't do is I didn't ask for invoices. And I should have. I should have said, so you say the sprinkler guy cost $16,000. I want to see his invoice. And I started asking for those at the very end, found a few discrepancies, and said, hey, we're going to have to make sure this is accurate here. It's another tip, red flag.
And maybe back up to when you did the contract at cost plus. Explain what that means.
Okay, what that means is that if, let's say, to take down some trees, because we had to do some of that, costs $4,000, we pay $4,000 to the builder who pays the tree person $4,000, and then we pay a percentage on top of that. And that's right now in building, at least what I'm familiar with, is around 18%. Sometimes 16, sometimes 20, but 18% is kind of in the middle. And that is where their profit margin is. That 18% is where they get their money for managing the project, which I look at and
it's fine. It's two different ways that contractors set up their budgets. One is they understand their subs numbers, what it costs to build. And so they'll give you a number and say, this is the number, and they've built in their margin. And then for them, because that margin is already built in, they're a little more motivated to make sure they keep that margin and that they hold within that. Because unless there's a change in scope, they can't come back to you technically to ask for money. When it's cost plus, they're basically saying, okay, well, they might not be fighting for you as much as a contractor who gave you the number and bid the project, because they're going, oh, well, I thought it would be $4,000, but it's 6 months later, and now the landscaper doubled his prices because they've got so much work. So now it's $8,000, and now pay 18% on top of that. So there's pros and cons to both types. But it's just those are some nuances for how the contractor themselves, because how a contractor is set up is they're managing all of the subs of the project. They're pulling the main permit, but they're hiring that out. They don't necessarily have people on staff who are doing the sewer work, the water work, the windows, the framing. They're hiring subcontractors, which are separate companies. So they're getting a fee for managing all of that, because technically you, the owner, in theory, aren't managing the subs and aren't managing the process. You're just talking to that general contractor.
Right. I want to add to that, though, that what's happened, at least in the Tennessee market, is that contractors, even who did it as a bid, are coming back to their owners and saying, yeah, it just costs way too much, so you got to pay me 25% more. I walk off the job. Like, well, that's a breach of contract. They're like, so sue me. And there are so many of those things happening right now that, and I'm not a lawyer, I can't give you any advice on any of this stuff with how to handle that. But I'm just saying that even if they give you what they say is a hard quote, don't count on it, right? Because
there's a reason in your budget you will hold a contingency percentage that that you're not putting for the contractor, but it depends on the market cycles and what's there. And that's the reason we're doing this, guys. So you can go in eyes wide open. So you're not, yes, this is a horror story of a new build project, but these are all the different things to be aware of, so it doesn't take you by surprise too. Because these things can happen. But so if you're in the middle of a similar situation, you're not in this alone. This happens, unfortunately, all the time. And, we'll get to the point where Eric tells, where it's at this point. And we'll probably do a follow-up at some point to say, hey, here's the happy ending. Because that's the thing with real estate, is that the longer you can hold on, the more resilient you can be. It will end up working out most likely in the long run. And if not, just got a great education in so many things.
Yeah. To just jump back in here and kind of get across the finish line a little bit, is we were very cash tight in the middle of this. We hadn't mortgaged all three properties. I'll get to that later. We had only did one. We pulled out a HELOC, put in the money to get us just enough to get us going on things. We got to the finish. The builder did a good, solid, sound job. It passed all the inspections, which, by the way, little word on inspection, don't pay until inspections are passed if that draw is for that thing. So example, our sprinkler guy had put in the sprinklers. He said, hey, here's my invoice. Because this was kind of between the first builder and the second builder. It was just in no man's land. And he says, I'm done. The bill is $16,000. And I said, well, tell you what, it's got to get inspected first. Well, I got all kinds of money in this, blah, 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 blah. And I knew that all the pipes were in because this had a sprinkler system, right? And I know it's all in the house there pretty much. So I said, tell you what, here's the deal. I'll pay you $10,000 and you get the balance when it passes inspection.
Fair.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So then I talk to the fire guy and the fire chief, and he comes out and he takes a look at it and says, yeah, it's pretty much done, except it needs this extra tank. Like, okay. So I called the sprinkler guy back. He says, well, yeah, I was mostly done. I'm going to finish it. It kind of reminds me of some of these, like, I'm working on it kind of things, right? So once he got it done, then I paid him. It'd been done, inspected. So little pro tip there that I learned. The builder, let's say we're done now. We're almost done. What ends up happening right before we actually finish the thing is our building loan runs out. We had a 2-year building loan. And so this building loan is going to expire. And so now our options are do a new building loan. Well, now for buildings in this area, our interest would be at 10% or over.
And what was it previously?
Over. About 5.
Oh,
right. So we're like, oh man, this is going to be terrible. How are we? And we're a month away from finishing. We can get the takeout loan in 30 days anyway. So we have to do a brand new full loan with the full closing and all the deal at exorbitant interest just to get it like these last 30 days. Well, it didn't turn out to be 30. It was, of course, in 90 days. But so what we did is we put other properties, mortgaged the other 2 properties. So now we're a total of 3. And we used that money to pay off the building loan. So at this point, we're in 100% cash. Right? 100% cash on this build. Now, based on loans from other properties. We get it finished. There's some detail work that needs tuned up. The builder finishes it up, tunes it up, it's ready to go. We decide we're going to sell this thing. We were going to keep it. And we thought, well, if we've got it in on cash, it's going to cash flow super awesome. But we looked at all the other exposures that we had. Oh, in the meantime, I left this part out. We bought another STR right before the other builder totally went under, fired his supervisor, and everything was going terrible. We bought another STR with a very significant mortgage payment per month. The place cash flows. Now, I don't say cash flow. It grossed a ton of money, but because we had a high interest rate on a very large loan, larger than $1 million, it cash flowed nothing. It was cash flowing negatively. So we've got these 3 properties that we just mortgaged, plus the rest of our portfolio, not all of which is cash, right? So we've got loans on other properties too. And so all of this debt everywhere, I know some investors are like, debt, get as much as you can. Well, guess what? If you've got really expensive debt and you're not cash flowing, you're not cash flowing. And you don't have a real estate portfolio just to feed it your paycheck every month, right? So we looked at this point, we said, we're going to have to sell. So put it on the market, worked with our agent. We found a buyer, disclosed everything. By the way, that's super important. If you had issues like this, you've got to disclose all the things. And so we did. We disclosed all the stuff. They said we want it anyways. We ended up selling it for about $100,000 under what we expected valuation to be, but we needed to get it gone because we're losing at this point about $15,000 a month just in debt service to keep our noses up. And we can't keep doing this. So we sold it. And in the end, we ended up about 0, right? That's not
for
including
about 2.5
years of work. And that 0 does not include any of the loan costs that we did to get to 0. It doesn't include all of the interest that we paid on all that debt, for that last year, which is, by the way, not 0. So really, we ended up in the red, but we got out of it and we survived. We learned a lot of things. we
All
learned a
right.
lot of
I
things.
mean, that is a heck of a story. And if that were someone's first investment, they would probably not do it again. But
Well,
this
they'd be
was
out of
not
business.
yours. Right. You are a
Yeah.
seasoned investor, you're seasoned in business, and there was a lot of lessons learned that you took from this. So maybe why don't you give us like your top 5 lessons learned or things that people can go, okay, when I go to do new construction, here's what I should look out for.
Okay. First, I want to say you want to work with a local builder who has worked in that market before and has a reputation to gain or lose. Okay. Somebody comes in from out of town, they got nothing to lose. So that's the first one. The next one is you can do a build that is builder financed, or you could do it where you do the financing. And there's a world of difference because if the builder holds the loan, which by the way was the case in our first 2 builds that went so super awesome. Yeah. Because if the builder delays 6 months, guess who's paying all those carrying costs? The builder. They are very motivated to get that done. So if you can, it's my opinion, get a builder to be the one who carries that loan.
So let's
Yeah.
double click on that because I know a lot of people come across and they go, oh, I've got this land. I've got these plans that are approved to start construction. And they think that it's all hunky dory and great. You don't really have that much value in having permanent approved plans on land with when you don't have the contractor lined up ready to put the shovel in the ground. So don't put as much weight into that concept when you come across those properties. I know that I talk to people frequently with that, where it's great, but it's not. There's still a whole lot more to deal with. Whereas the builder, if he's taking it through and his plan was to take that lot, build it out, sell it when he's done, you're right. They've got way more skin in the game.
Yeah. That's the thing. Vet your builders. Do more research than I did. I mean, I Googled them. I looked at stuff up like this. I honestly would say hire a paralegal and do a background on them. Like legit go in there because it's worth 100, 200. I've never done it before. I did it afterwards. And that's how I found out how many lawsuits he had against him. Is I hired a friend of mine who is in the legal field and she popped in and she's like, oh, this guy's got all kinds of stuff on him. Like, oh, jeez. So
Is
that's
there a
one
dollar
thing.
amount threshold you would recommend that someone says, okay, when you start to get, is it 100, 250? Is it based on that person's financial situation? At what point would you tell them to go that extensive on a contractor?
How much can you afford to lose? If you've got $1 million project you're starting and a legal company says it's $500 to do a super in-depth on it, I'm dropping that money. You betcha. Because that
Exactly.
is a small cost to pay to find out that what you're about to get into is actually really good, right?
That's
I
a
would
great
totally
tip.
I don't pay for anything in their cash draws until it's done. And if there's an inspection tied to it, electrical, plumbing, framing, insulation, whatever the things are, that has to be done and approved by whatever municipality does the inspection before you pay for it. Just don't. Well, we're just waiting for the inspector. He's running behind, but we got to get this thing paid because we got our subs to pay. It's like, nope. The deal was it's inspected first, then I pay you. So that's one thing that I would say. Another one is you have to budget for cost overruns. Like just you do. It's just going to happen. 20%, I don't know. Kind of like Christy said here, it depends on where the market cycle is. Because when the economy really slows down, it's a good time to build because people are hungry. They're looking for work and your costs don't go bananas. 21, 22, which is when we're doing this, materials costs going up, labor costs going up. Everybody wants in the market. That was too high. And, I just, the last one I would say, and this is a general thing when it comes to working with people that you work with, is do your background first, check on these people, find out, well, what does their work look like? What's their reputation look like? What's their finished projects look like? What are the recommendations, et cetera, et cetera. Do all your work you can up front. But then trust your spidey senses, right? If it feels like, this just doesn't feel right, then you need to pay attention to that. Tied to that, hire slow, fire fast. Really take your time to hire somebody to commit to this kind of a thing. Go on lots of dates, but do your background research, whatever the thing is. But once things start to go wrong, and I should have known this, this is a general principle. If the person you're working with, there's the two of you, and that person is willing to be dishonest to a third party in order to get you what you want, trust me, they will be dishonest to you to get what they want. You just don't know when they're going to do it, right? So you've got to work with people with integrity. And so when I saw them turning in plans that weren't stamped for the actual property and when they said, oh, don't worry about the budget. We're just going to sprinkle it in like fairy dust. And oh, don't worry about this other stuff. And when I found out that what they had been saying was not true about the city delaying the process, I should have known these are people who just make up a story to get what they want. And they will keep doing that. And I should have fired them probably about what would you say,
Now, what
Christy?
I'll say
50
though,
times?
yes, but hindsight is 2020. So I would also say give
It is.
yourself a little bit of a break because yes, you can, what Steve Jobs said, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only looking back. Yeah, now you can go, sure, that was a huge red flag and that was crazy, but they all have a good explanation, and typically their builders are going to have a good explanation for why things are going. So I would say give yourself some slack because this makes sense now, but this is also, like you said, you came out of this alive. You got maybe some more wrinkle and gray hairs than you wanted, but you have a heck of a education now on this type of development and builders and things that who knows how that's exponentially going to help you in the future. Because are you going to stop investing now?
No, that's a good question. And the answer is no. We're not, but I'm going to be a little more careful when it comes to this thing. And we've talked about a lot of those things in particular. And I guess that's the point that I want to close on, is that we went into a project like this. I'll say this too, just in general, in investing, bite off what you can chew. I know there's a lot of folks out there who are like, go big or go home, do all the things, go massive, take massive action. Well, if massive action for you is taking a course, okay, maybe you should do that if you can afford it. If it's buying your first rental and you're only going to get 5% cash on cash, but you can afford to do that and you've got cash reserves, okay, for you, that might be going massive, might be going big. But you have to be able to afford to lose, right? So if you bite off so much that if it doesn't work out, you're broke and you lose your retirement, don't do it.
Yep.
Right?
Don't be chasing someone else's dream, someone else's door number, someone else's, oh, they flip and they do new construction and they do chase what you want, chase what you can afford to lose, chase what you can,
That's right,
what you're interested in and passionate about, and do it calculated. And, just know you will have bumps and bruises along the way, but you will end up like Erik, alive and still willing to invest. You just get a more defined box of what you're willing to do and what you're willing to not do.
That's right. And we are going to have more stories from us, from other people, of issues that happen. They're not all train wrecks, but we're going to tell the truth about things and how we survive them and how you can too. Because if we can do it, you can do it.
That's right. And a little teaser for the next one. It might be a story of mine where we happen to have the cartel and a massive Homeland Security drug bust in a property that we bought. So yeah, stay tuned for the next one, guys.
Sounds like a good time.
Oh, it was an adventure. So this is the Real Estate Pessimist podcast, and I'm Christy with Erik here, and we'll see you guys next time.